Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Heart Centered Therapist podcast. I'm Sindee Gozansky, your host, and today it is a huge privilege and pleasure to introduce my guest, Adel Korkor, MD. So let me give you his introduction. Dr. Adel Korkor is a physician, health activist, and entrepreneur. He is a distinguished nephrologist with a remarkable medical career spanning over 37 years. His journey into mental health advocacy began after experiencing a major panic attack at age 40, which led him to discover the therapeutic benefits of running, a sport that is near and dear to my heart. This experience inspired him to incorporate physical activity into mental health treatment and medical treatment, and he has a belief encapsulated in this motto: motion impacts emotion. He's hosting an international Motion Impacts Emotion conference this September, which we'll talk more about. As the founder of A.B. Korkor Foundation for Mental Health, abkf.org, Dr. Korkor has dedicated himself to raising awareness, reducing stigma, and promoting wellness in mental health. His foundation supports a range of initiatives, including the 5-50-50 Run Walk series across all 50 states and the 70-70-70 event, so much more. Dr. Korkor is also a TEDx speaker and has been involved in several documentaries, including You're Not Alone and The Hidden Pandemic. Now he is on his next mission to help make this world a better place for those struggling with mental illness. He hopes to increase awareness, address the staggering shortage of affordable care, emphasize the importance of wellness in mental health, fund research, and focus on underserved groups such as veterans, minorities, and those struggling with addiction. Welcome, Adel. I'm so happy you're here.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be on your podcast.
Oh, the pleasure is mine. And side note is we met through my brother, and I know you've experienced a lot of amazing photography trips with him. And all of us enjoy running so much. Running is a huge passion of mine. Admittedly, it helps immensely with my own anxiety. I know we're going to talk about a little bit your history with anxiety, and where would you like to start?
Well, I think we can start with that. We can start with my own personal journey, and
Sure.
uh, and the TEDx talk that I gave really summarizes that and puts it in a 13, 14 minutes perspective. I was born and raised in Syria, Damascus, Syria, and anxiety has really been a part of my life since I was a child. I remember when I was probably 11 or 12 years old, I was convinced that I had heart problems, and my mother arranged for me to see a prominent cardiologist at the military hospital in Syria, Damascus at the time, and then he went and examined me, and I had a little heart murmur and had an EKG and all kind of things. And the heart doctor just assured me that, Adel, you're okay. And here I am. I think I said 11. I was more like 13 or 14 years old. And I went on to really be someone who faints at the sight of blood. Um, like I remember my dad would be slaughtering a chicken, and the next thing is I'm laying on the floor because of the sight of blood. And if I ever cut myself or anything of which a drop of blood is seen or
Yes.
felt, I'm out. But my dad was a diabetic, and I watched him go through diabetes. Was very challenging lifestyle, and
Mhm.
he really never accepted himself as a diabetic and having to take medications for it. Insulin at the time, insulin had to be administered 3 or 4 times a day.
Mm.
And so one time during a visit to his endocrinologist, I sat in the waiting room and listened to the conversation between him and the physician as uh, we were leaving the office. And he looked at me and he said, "What are you going to be when you get older?" And I was at the time like in sixth grade or fifth grade. And I said, "I want to be a doctor." just like you. And then he went back to his office and grabbed a stethoscope, an old stethoscope, and handed it to me.
Ah,
And that became my stethoscope for many years.
amazing.
She said, well, and I mean, really, I was inspired by really wanting to help someone like my dad. And I think that's
Yes.
what. And when I went home and told my family that that's what I wanted to be, everybody laughed. And it's like, my God, how could anybody like you become a doctor? I mean, you
Because you
faint
faint?
inside the blood. Uh,
Ah,
uh, but I made it to medical school. And then my story in medical school was really very interesting because I remember my first visit to the lab when we were doing anatomic studies on the frogs, where we have to anesthetize the frog by putting a pin in the back of the
oh.
neck and push it down the spine, because we were testing the independent function of the muscle from
Mm,
the central nervous system. And I remember passing out and the frog just jumping on my head and my chest.
really?
And at the time, I like in that class, I was one guy and then four other girls. So you can imagine how embarrassing it was for
Yes.
me.
Oh my
And
gosh.
I was the one like expected to do this because I'm the guy in the group.
Right.
And I'm the guy that's now on the floor. And then, of course, anatomy classes. And one thing that, I remember really vividly is that going to my first operating room and watching
Mm,
a venous stripping procedure and seeing the blood coming out of the patient's legs and down on the floor. I went and saw physicians at the time,
mhm.
psychiatrists, and they gave me at the time Valium. Valium was a big thing back then, but it was very sedating and I couldn't really
Right.
function as a medical student. And finally I did, I think to some extent overcome that. I came to the US and started out in medicine and then nephrology, and the switch to running really began around that time
Mhm.
when I lived in an apartment very close to the hospital, and it was right near a park. And I would look out my window and I see people running up and down the street, and it would be a nice day. I said, why can't I do that? I'm going to go ahead and start doing that. Then I started doing it, and the benefits that I gathered from it was far more than the physical activity side of things, because I found
Mm,
that I'm less stressed, I'm less anxious,
yes.
I'm dealing with things more effectively. And then at 32 or 33, I got married and four kids to follow, a lot of business responsibilities. I left academic medicine, started private practice. And during that time, one day I was about 39 or 40. I remember my family was out of town, out of the country, in fact, and I was laying on the sofa in the living room and felt a crushing pain in my chest and was
Mm,
diaphoretic and
ah,
sweaty. My heart was beating fast, and I thought for sure I was going to die.
mm.
So I called 911. They come in
Right.
there.
And you're a physician,
I know.
like yes.
I call 911, they come and they pick me up, they take me to the emergency room, they assumed that I
Mm,
had a heart attack, and I end up through one heart catheterization and a second heart
ah,
catheterization. And finally, on the third day of my hospitalization, all the cardiac enzymes were negative. The heart tests that were done, the angiograms were negative. The guy who would do me my endoscopy, he said, Adel, listening to your story and seeing what's happening with you, I wonder if you have panic attacks. So I went home when I was discharged from the hospital, and I pulled the Harris textbook of medicine and I read about panic attacks. And my God, I felt like I was a textbook case. I was an
mm,
absolute textbook case of panic disorder. And it really reflects on all my entire, history from
right.
childhood to now. And that's when I decided, well, since my much of my concern with my anxiety and panic disorder centered around my heart, with running being something that would stress my heart, it
Mhm.
allows me to really make sure that my heart is okay. And so every time I go out for a run, it's really another test for the
Yeah.
fact that my heart is healthy. Uh,
Yes.
and
Yes.
I went on to become very competitive athlete. I ran a lot of marathons, a lot of races, and suddenly my anxiety was less. I was able to cope better with stress in general, and went on to really have a very successful career in medicine, of which
Mhm.
running has always been a part of it.
Mhm.
Um,
Yes.
and on and off, I still suffer from panic attacks, but every time I feel like it's coming, I know what it is, and I just
Mhm.
go out there and go out for a run, or like convince myself, listen, I just ran this morning. It couldn't be my heart
Right.
because my gym kicked my heart rate up to 130, 140, and I was fine. There's really
Yes.
no reason
Right.
to think that this is a heart attack.
Yeah. So
So
really you're this is also so key because it's being having that awareness that your heart is okay. This is called the Heart Centered Therapist podcast because we try to be heart centered from like that emotional, spiritual place, but it also includes the physical. And it's really important that we have those signs or tells for ourselves that we are healthy. And this is a beautiful way to share that, right? That it's so important, even as a physician, to know that your body is healthy.
yes, yes, yes. So when I decided to step down from my clinical practice, I decided that I wanted to really have another mission, and that is to really bring awareness to the mental health issue, because many of my patients suffered from it. I saw
Mhm.
it during my practice, my dialysis patients and transplant patients, and all the mental health issues that they suffer from. And I felt that that was it. And my own personal story, it blended it all together. I felt that my foundation really should focus on that. And that's what I choose. And To bring awareness to the role of physical activity in mental health, I decided to embark on a flagship event called the
Mm,
55050, which is 5K in all 50 states in 50 days. And I did it for 2 consecutive years in person, but then after
mhm.
that, because of COVID, it became a hybrid between in person and virtual. But I ran 5K in all, every single day,
In
even when I was not doing it in person at the states that I am in.
right.
So
In
over
in
time,
50 days, right? This
I
this
did 50
is
days. Yeah, yeah,
amazing.
yeah.
I love when you tell the story of how you came up with this idea. If you would
Yeah.
tell that like when you were on your treadmill.
Yeah, yeah, I was on my treadmill, and it was in the winter time and in the fall, and it was a rainy day and it was dark outside, so I can see the reflection of the US map hanging behind me on the treadmill in front. And I had my treadmill set at 5K, and I said, it looks like 5K. And I said, oh, we got 5K. Well, there's 50 states out there. I can run 5K in all 50 states. I can do it in 50 days. And I remember when I got off the treadmill, I ran up to my computer and I pulled out 20 friends and family members, and I emailed them, and I
Mhm.
started calling some of them, and I said, what do you think about this idea? And nah, nah, no, and the funny part about it, one of my friends, close friends, who was also a runner, he said, Adel, you got to go see a psychiatrist,
Oh.
because this is not
Right.
something that you can do, and that can be done. So as I was in the process of looking for an executive director for the foundation, and I came across a gentleman who had just sold his Wisconsin marathon business, and he is
Wow.
very attuned to scheduling or building events or organizing 5Ks.
Mhm.
So he said, "Well, it can be done." And he took it
Amazing.
upon himself to do that, and it was just an amazing experience. That picture behind me over there is
Yeah.
when I crossed my, I think this was my 44th run
Oh,
in 44
wow.
days. And this was in New York, I believe. This was in New York. Yeah. And
Oh,
every
Adel,
time
that's great.
I look at myself, I say, "My God," you know, and that so thousands of people showed up at my events, and many of them really shared their own personal story about their
Their
mental health
story.
issues.
Each of us has a story. Yes, and they
Each
shared
one
that
had a
with you.
story, and then many of them really shared the same story regarding of how physical activity, how running or swimming or
Mhm,
exercise have actually changed their life as well.
mhm.
So it's not just me, it's a lot of people out there. And as you know, Cindy, that there are hundreds, thousands of papers right now that are published on the role of physical activity in mental health. Anywhere
Yes.
from looking at the basic anatomy of the brain, biology,
Mhm.
hormonal aspects that we see in our circulation, and then also um, uh, biologic
Mhm.
impact that it has on our physical and mental well-being. I mean, the impact that it has on the amygdala or, the frontal lobe, from studies showing that connectivity is increased, the number of neurons are increased. Um, our emotional resilience
Mm.
is highly impacted by our physical fitness. Over 3,000 papers published in 2023
Wow.
related to the role of physical activity in mental health, both on the basic science part
Mhm.
as well as on the clinical science part.
Yes. And who wouldn't want that? Who wouldn't want some of those benefits plus the creativity, the clarity. It goes beyond the anecdotal evidence that we might feel when we start to see neurological um these neurological pieces of it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Even now, I think there's a lot of studies to suggest that degenerative neuromuscular disorders,
Mhm.
like Alzheimer's disease, cognitive behavioral
Mhm.
cognitive issues can all be impacted by
Yes.
physical activity. And in fact, patients who have early Alzheimer's disease, if you put them through a regular exercise schedule routine, you can actually slow the rate of the progression of their disease.
Yes.
Uh,
Yes. I've seen a recent study about that.
right,
Amazing.
right.
Mhm.
So that's why I think
Mhm.
movement matters not only in respect to our physical well-being, but also emotional well-being. And I strongly believe, Cindy, that our muscles, are endocrine organs.
Mm.
They are organs that when you move, when you put them to work, they they pay you back by hormones that are released from there that goes into the circulation, goes into our brain, activate neuron production and connectivity. It's really almost like, and it's a statement that I've used in many of the talks that I've given. It's like infusing miracle grow into our brain.
Yes. Yes. That's a great metaphor. When you say this, right? And that notion that our muscles are like endocrine organs, like that can be so helpful and inspiring if people could really understand that because I think what happens and I know you've talked about this so eloquently working with your patients in the nephrology world and patients who, are depressed and are overweight and are fighting all of the different metabolic syndromes and can't they say like I can't be like you doctor, I can't be fit and eat healthy and so I don't even know how I'm going to do it, or we have clients who are too depressed to get up and go take a walk around the block. So it's so hard to help people see the value of this and find their own internal motivation.
Yes, yes, I agree. I think internal motivation is a big challenge.
Hmm.
In the conference that we have put it together, my foundation's put it together on September 7th. We're going to have a talk on the barriers.
Great.
What are those barriers? Some of them are really barriers that the individual themselves say, I just don't have the energy to do this. But some of the barriers are cultural.
Mhm.
Some of them are physical because individuals may not have access to get outside or have the help that they need to assist them in the movement process, in the moving process. There are a lot of barriers, but I think one of the biggest barrier, at least that's my own personal opinion, it's really on the provider side, on the physician side,
Mhm.
on the caregiver side, the therapist side, said, you know what? It works for me. It works for so many patients that I've seen. It can work for you. Just give it one step. Just every marathon,
Yeah.
every 5K run, start with one step.
Mhm.
just make that first step. And I think as soon as people started realizing the impact that this have on their well-being and how they feel, I would say the majority of them that I've actually dealt with find it be something that they were willing to do.
Yes, that's beautiful. And Adel, I so agree with you because sometimes we forget that our job, one of our big jobs as helpers in the world of caregiving, mental health care, is to provide hope, give our clients hope. And this is what you're saying. Tell them, I've seen it work for so many other people. I've seen it work for myself. I can be with you for doing one step at a time, right? Like it's so important to give people hope, especially now.
Mhm. Yeah, I agree. And like I also have to say, Cindy, that it's not really a panacea. I mean, it's not that exercise is going to solve their, you know,
Yeah.
there are patients who really need medication. There are patients who need therapy. I mean, treatments of mental health, as you know, is very complicated, and it
Yes.
has a wide spectrum of treatment options. There are so many treatment options out there. But my mission in life is really to bring awareness to the simplest, least invasive one of them all. Motion impacts emotion. By doing that, you're not going to cure. This is not a cure. This is something that can help. This is something that, in addition to everything else that you're receiving, from talk therapy to counseling to drug therapy, ECT, MDR, whatever it is that you're treating those patients with, it's going to give you another edge. It's like adding spice to your food,
Yes.
adding more color to your
Mhm.
food. And it's so much fun. I mean, you see trees and birds and nature around you, and you're inspired by the people out there that are walking, and you see wilderness. And I know your brother and I had a wonderful run one time when we were in North Carolina. It was in the fall. It was just spectacular.
Mm,
The fresh air, the smell, all of this just energized these, amazing hormonal sedating effects that we have in our brain that calms us down and helps us, you know,
yeah.
think through things more clearly.
Yes, right. Experiencing the awe of nature, that can
Ah,
be a benefit. The social connection, synchronicity of running in sync or being next to somebody, all of those things are hugely beneficial for us as humans. So, I love how you describe this and the purpose of your mission of your foundation. It's amazing. I hope people will definitely check out abkf.org. We're going to link to everything. We're not quite finished with our conversation yet because there's still a few important things to talk about, but really breaking the stigma of mental health is such a passion of yours.
yeah,
Yeah. And people's stories matter, people matter, their voices matter, and providing that simple access to a way to have some quality of life is so significant to what you do. I know you're also a big proponent of early education and prevention too in the world of mental health.
absolutely. And I really truly believe that there are other aspects of a movement that really relates to children.
Mm,
Yeah, I think that kids nowadays don't spend as much time outside as they should. They're not as physically active as they should. And that's why you see, like in children, there's a significantly higher rate of obesity. And as
yeah.
you know, as a therapist, you're seeing it in your field, the higher rate of depression and anxiety among children. And
Hmm.
suicide rate in this country is 45,000 people die of suicide every single year. The majority of them are under the age of 21. So
Yeah.
physical activity in that young age group can actually be extremely helpful in helping them deal with these emotions and helping them deal with it's not easy to be a child nowadays with what you're bombarded with in terms of
Yeah.
information, whether through social media or friends or bullying and all these other
Hmm.
things that you experience in school. But I truly believe that if we can arm our children with the movement, encourage
Yes.
them to go out there and move and compete, not for the sake of winning, but because when you go out there and play a soccer game, even if you lose, you won.
Right. Yeah.
Because you build that resilience in your emotions, and now you can deal with the challenges that your friend might pick on you for, for your one missing part of an ear or something, in your looks and whatever.
Mhm.
Kids are mean to each other.
Oh, we need this now more than ever, and I think that's so important. And for the parents and older siblings to model the movement as well, like that's critical. But starting young is super important. Um, yeah.
Yeah. And that's why my foundation is doing a lot of work with an organization called Fit Kids. And it really brings in physical activity into the life of children in the underprivileged schools, the schools that don't
Hmm.
offer have physical education programs, or during the summertime when there's no structured programs available.
Yeah.
So Fit Kids is a foundation that we are we're a fan of, and we're supporters of, and we're helping them build the program in every state in the country. We're starting out with 15 states, but our hope is that they would expand their presence in all 50 states.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Yes. And as we talk about the groups that sometimes need more help, especially kids, I even think providers, I even think physicians, therapists, first responders, there are a lot of people who could also use the support around mental health and movement. And sometimes there's a stigma there for even being willing to, look at that treatment that they may need or support.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
I was watching the Olympics yesterday, and I noticed that they have now a refugee Olympic team
Mm.
made out of 30 players. Some of them are Syrian or from Bangladesh or Iraq or Afghanistan, and these are kids that have talents in their home country, and they end up, being pushed out because of war, because of
Yeah.
discrimination or other reasons, and now they're really engaged in physical activity, and then they found their home country that is willing to look at those talents and then help them, enrich them, and support them, and ultimately they became a very successful athletes that they could be an Olympian. That the way how
Yeah.
that physical activity is brought into the picture of refugees is so important.
Yes.
One of the speakers that we're going to have at the conference is Simon Rosenbaum, and he's done enormous amount of work in refugees, where he brought physical activity in those camps,
Mm.
and then how he found that physical activity is an equalizer. It brings people together.
Yes. Wow.
You know, so it helps at so many different perspectives, and even we
Absolutely.
have a speaker who's going to talk about PTSD and how
Great.
physical activity can actually help re or re-energize your brain or
Yes.
reset your
Right.
brain.
Oh, I
Uh,
love it. It's so true with trauma, and that the physical activity can have a meditative quality. And we think, oh, we can't meditate because our brains are too busy, or there's too many memories. But doing some kind of physical activity becomes some of that meditation that can re-energize and rewire your brain. Yeah, I love it. So this conference is coming up September 7th in Wisconsin. It's clearly something that therapists could be interested in, as well as other people in the healthcare fields. Tell us a little bit, Adel, about the conference and how people can find out about it.
Good. The conference will be held in Heartland, Wisconsin, literally in my backyard here. I live in Heartland, and it's at
Oh,
University Lake School Auditorium. It would be on September 7th. It's a one-day conference starting at 8 in the morning. And we learned today that we are accredited, so people who attended will get CME credit for it. We have speakers from Australia, Dr. Rosenbaum, and we have
mhm.
9 other speakers from many parts of the U.S. We have 3 from Harvard, one from the Medical College of Wisconsin, one from the University of Alabama, and it's going to be discussing topics that are related to the fundamental aspect of the basic chemistry of brain muscle interaction. And then the next one is the clinical, with
Mhm.
PTSD, was sexual abuse trauma,
Yes.
was refugees. So we really put together what I think is a tremendous panel that I think has been a dream of mine for many years to put together and then bring it
Ah,
to the forefront.
great.
So we as a physicians, as a therapists, as a society, start look at exercise not as a fad,
Mhm.
but as really something that should be part of everyday life, just like food and entertainment and
Yes.
uh, you
Right.
know, it,
Well, right. I think for you and me it is. I was gonna
I
say,
know, I know,
we made sure we got our exercise
I
in today.
know, I know, I know, I
Yeah,
know.
that's beautiful. The conference looks so great. I know you're offering in person as well as a virtual option, so people could attend by Zoom if you can't get to Wisconsin. I am really hoping to be able to fly out there and come.
That's
The
awesome.
Yes, the panel looks amazing. And I really want to encourage any listeners who are therapists right now to have a look at it, because it has that beautiful combination of mental health, physical health, the clinical piece. Think about all of the somatic work that we do with our clients that we read about. This is just another adjunct to that. And one day you're going to get CEUs. So it really looks great, and another great way to network and to reignite your own game with your physical health, with your movement. What a name for it. Motion impacts emotion. That's the greatest.
Thank you, thank you. Well, the conference is conference.abkf.org.
Okay.
Conference, to sign up is conference.abkf.org, or you can go to our website, abkf.org, and then you can find the link to the conference and you can register there. I would love to see you there, and then I'm
Yeah.
hopeful that your brother can show
Mm.
too, and I would love to have both of you here. We'll have dinner afterwards.
Oh my goodness. That's a plan. Sounds wonderful. Well, Adel, you have just been so inspiring to me and to my audience because I think we really need to be able to expand our view of what mental health care is about, right? It's an everyday thing for every person. We all have stories, we've all been touched in our lives. And so the work you're doing to break the stigma is tremendous and to promote awareness. Um, I will link to your TED Talk, which is so great as well. And everybody can find out more about you in the show notes. Um, and I really hope that we can follow along because you are one determined individual from fainting at the sight of blood to becoming a physician to doing 5K in 50 states in 50 days and so much more. I mean, this is amazing. So,
Thank you
thank
very
you.
much. Thank you. I really
Yeah.
appreciate it.
Okay. Thank you so much. I appreciate everybody joining the podcast this week, and we'll see you next week. And until then, stay heart-centered.
Thank you.
All right. How do I just have to stop the recording? They've made a new button right there.